the University of Washington, for example, has fed or has around 17,000 employees that they have fed to Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's located where?
In Seattle.
Okay. So if you're the University of Washington president and you have a place that is like basically you're a farm system for one of the greatest massive companies in the world, right?
Yeah.
And they want to do a deal with you when it comes to streaming if it ends up being them. Because it's what, Apple, Amazon, whoever. You want to piss them off? If they said, hey, we want you to be a part of the Pac-12 and we want to have, isn't that at least part of the conversation?
Okay, well, normally I would say yes. But if you've been following Amazon and how they care about their employees over the last few years, I don't think Jeff Bezos gives an F about what they think about anything.
All right.
Yeah, but are we talking? I don't think that applies the same to upper level employees versus the dude who's packing your shampoo.
But 17,000, some of those are not up. They're not all upper level employees. So again, I think if there's some big higher level UW people on the board, then yeah, sure, probably it's the same way that works for probably Stanford and Cal and anybody else who's peppered throughout Apple. That are there. So, yeah, I'm sure there are some people that would push for that. Just like if you go back to the founding of ESPN. What was ESPN at the beginning was a bunch of UConn grads, right? With people who are from Connecticut. That's why it's in Connecticut, is because there are a bunch of UConn people. So, at the beginning of ESPN, their sports were a lot of stuff that people like in Connecticut. And then when they started to go national, they're like, well, or more and more people started picking it up. They're like, well, we should probably do a little less hockey, because it's not as popular in Florida or Georgia or, Texas, and do more of this so that we can get the rights to as they grew and grew and grew.
They also were growing during the Big East in their amazing run, so it was going to include some of those schools anyway. All right, so here's a couple other things he mentioned. And this is something that when you read articles, whether it's from someone who's reporting how the Pac-12 might look or how those involved may look as far as who's going to pay for the money, who's going to end up feeding the beast, so to speak, in the Pac-12, whatever that might be. So if you're, what's the guy who's the Arizona head coach? Tommy Lloyd, came from Gonzaga, won the Pac-12 title. So if your president says, man, hey, listen, we're going to get all this money and we're going to get a nice chunk of money and we're going to not be on linear TV very much, the AD or the men's basketball coach or the football coach, no matter what kind of money it might be, are they not going to say, yes, but can my guys find it? Can my recruits or who I'm trying to recruit, can they find it?
The recruits can. The parents might not be able to. The viewers, the alums might not be able to, or it might not be as convenient. So...
Because of the lack of education towards streaming?
Yeah, and the fact that, like, while it's pretty cool, like, streaming is ultimately the biggest convenience in the world for a lot of viewing. Like, look, if I want to watch any movie ever, I mean, I can pretty much just go. I don't even have to now. You have remotes where I can just be like, Rocky 3, and then Alexa will pop up, and she'll tell me all the different ways I can watch Rocky 3. Occasionally there's something that's not on streaming because of weird, complicated rights issues that no one will ever understand, even the people who have those rights. But, I can either watch Rocky 3 on something I've subscribed to, I can buy Rocky 3, I can rent Rocky 3, and I don't have to move. Like, I literally only have to say audibly what I wanted to watch. And so while that's convenient, it's not the same as sports-wise, so it's a little bit harder to navigate that. Now, I'm sure technology will catch up to it. I mean, you can write 50 term papers on ChatGPT now. I'm sure that same kind of technology would be applied to streaming where it just makes it easy for you to get what you want. But, in the short term, it's probably not an easy thing for most of your viewing public.
I just think that live sports is a cable deal, man. Like, that's just what I keep coming back to. Like, I understand streaming's the future and streaming's this and streaming's that, and I understand that 5 years or 10 years from now that, that all of us will be all streaming all the time. But as of right now, for me, And I know I don't speak for everybody by any means. I'm not a cord cutter, so there's a lot of people that are like, Psh, I'm already beyond that. I'm on to stage 2. I got, YouTube TV or whatever. I get that others have done that, but for me, if I'm flipping between the Michigan game and the Texas game and the Oklahoma game, and I'm doing that on cable. I'm not doing that hopping from ESPN Plus to the Fox app to the going back to my main splash page on Roku to then flip over to the NBC Universal or Peacock to watch Notre Dame. I'm going channel 8 to channel 12 to channel 22, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm not having to skip and hop around. That's the main point of it. That's the main argument that people have with streaming. It's not that we're incapable of figuring it out. It's not that if you're 50 plus, you have no chance of ever learning it. I mean, I think it's as much being stubborn as just not being able to learn it sometimes. And there is a little bit of an age gap as far as technology goes. Like I told Jack one time, like Jack and them have been taught so differently than what I was taught. Like we're pretty far apart, age-wise, and so that makes sense. But like some of the stuff that's just like layup technology questions for somebody that's 22 or 23. What are you, Jack? 21? Okay, whatever. 21.
I think he's 23.
Okay, 23 is massively different than somebody like even in their 30s because so much has changed. So that's understandable, but I'm still not convinced that as of right now and for the immediate future that live sports and cable aren't the better pairing overall.
Oh, there's no question.
Like,
even for someone like me,
so
there's
that's
no
for me,
doubt about
when
it.
I hear the streaming piece, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And in the future, that could be really great, and that makes a ton of sense. But right now, and in the immediate future, you're going to have to convince me that that's going away from cable to begin with. And if anything, if it weren't for that whole streaming part with the Pac-12 negotiations to begin with, there wouldn't even be that much controversy. That's the that's the thing that's bigger than, and almost the money part of it. And if it's not bigger, then it's equal to, okay, well, it's the money plus the streaming that gives you this combustible conversation of like, oh, God, what road are they headed down? Because it's one thing if the money's similar, but you don't have the amount of exposure. And then if they're both not that great, well, then that is something that you go, okay, well, could that possibly make somebody go, my future's not really great here? And that's where this whole conversation stems from, is just what are they going to be able to land? So, yeah, I'm still convinced that the cable is the right now and the foreseeable future. But I do understand those that argue about streaming and how prominent that will be. I wonder how far away we are from that still being, like the ESPN idea we were talking about the other day where they wanted to make it all in one, all encompassing, where there was one page for everything. We're not close to that yet. Like that wasn't an idea that they were telling you is a couple years away. That's an idea that they are bandying about and researching and don't appear to be anywhere close to because the agreements themselves are going to take some time to sort out. So, yeah, I mean, I still side with cable, but yes, for an Amazon, for the Pac-12, it does make a lot of sense as far as the future and what their options might be.
One of the things that when I was talking to Jim about certain of those universities, and again, it could be the youth and the age, as Craig was mentioning as well, is that like Apple has how many devices? As many as you want?
Yeah. I mean, like, again, if you were to put something on Apple, and look, Apple, I made the joke a few weeks ago about U2. They just, one day we all woke up and we had a free U2 album. Apple can do that. Like, one day you're going to wake up in the morning and they could put the Pac-12 everywhere, but just like the U2 album, they foolishly assumed that everyone liked U2. Like, if you didn't grow up and hear Sunday Bloody Sunday, you couldn't have cared less about it and be like, I'm more of a Lady Gaga person. I don't know why I've got this free U2 album that I now can't delete. Same thing with the Pac-12. They can put it on Apple TV Plus and it's already on. It'll be on everything before. Same with Amazon and their Fire, TVs and Fire tablets and everything that they have. They can put it on all over the place. So yeah, it's certainly something that makes it convenient and available, but are people going to go to that? I think the Pac-12, and if you look at the way that the networks were set up before, where Larry Scott set it up, and Larry Scott deserves, kind of all the smoke that he gets when it comes to all the mistakes that he made. The idea that he had for the Pac-12 to own the networks
was good.
It was a great idea. It was just far too early for its time and didn't have the carriage. They couldn't get DirecTV, so it just cratered, and then they never kind of amended what they were going to do and just kept on with that plan. With going mostly streaming, that is probably the way of the future. But since it's not the way of the now, are you too far ahead of the curve? You know, are you the Jimmy Carter of conferences where, you know, we're not even to the point now where Jimmy Carter would be a good president, but like in 2050, Jimmy Carter might have been the right guy because he was so smart and so good. But when he was elected president, yeah, we weren't ready for him.
All right, so
he was smarter than all of us.
Presidents look at dollars, right?
Yeah.
And they also look at who scratches their itch, right?
Yeah.
So what do ADs and coaches look at? They look at how can we get better?
Yeah, how can we win?
How can we win?
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be interesting if you could ever get a conversation about what the conversations are between the presidents, those in the athletic department, the ADs, and others. Jim also brought this up, and I believe this was mentioned before, but who has the MLS deal?
Apple.
Apple has MLS, right? So they get 15 games are on Fox. And then all the other things are on Apple. Is there any room for the Pac-12 to do that? To where all the games are because Fox is, we've been told, now whether or not someone can call it as Eric Shanks and say, hey, we'd like to visit with you again. But really, there's only the one night time spot open on Saturday. And then there's a possibility of a late night spot on Friday. But you stream one night, and then ESPN does the other one, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really that complicated. It's just, yeah, they would do it. I mean, it all depends on what their deal is. I mean, are they Apple streaming alone? Are they Apple and Amazon? Are they Apple, Amazon, and Vudu or whatever? Tubi? I mean, like, we have no idea what they're debating. But I mean, I've always thought, like, if you do mostly ESPN streaming and then you have like your Friday night game of the week on Apple, that seems like it would probably work out pretty well for you. And then you have the late time zone on ESPN that would normally be yours. But I know that there's people that are far more into the weeds on like the TV, you know, times and all of that stuff that can get it exactly, but I've always thought that seems like their best bet is to have a high-profile Friday game. But what's high-profile, too, also? Like, I mean, you know, how many matchups can you theoretically have between Oregon, USC? Like, I mean, you can only do that, you know, Oregon, USC, Oregon, Utah, Utah, USC. How many of those do you have to go 15, 16 weeks if you need to? But, yeah, I mean, I think it's always kind of been explained that they'll do streaming. And whether or not that's the majority has been, again, the big question and the big talking point. Whereas the other piece of this is, okay, whatever doesn't end up on streaming is going to end up on ESPN, and we have no idea what that is until we know what the streaming piece is and what the focus is there. But yeah, they're not on Fox. I mean, Fox isn't.
It doesn't seem like they're interested unless
unless there's something behind the scenes. Yeah.
And look, there is. I mean, if Apple and Emma, if they're all streaming together, because ESPN is going to be streaming some Pac-12 games, you know that they're going to put some of that on ESPN Plus. Otherwise, it does them no good. But
same with the Big 12's deal, though.
But like But see, that's what's great about the Big 12's deal is like you have. Well, at least convenient. It's two spots to go. It's ESPN or Fox. And if you add another spot, like that might be good for money, but does it add like another thing that's going to hurt your ratings overall because people aren't going to get that third service?
Fox does not have streaming.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, they do.
What do they have?
Fox Sports Go.
I didn't even know that.
Just, yeah, well.
Is it ESPN Plus for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, we watch it in here all the time.
Everybody has streaming.
Yeah.
At this point. Okay. Everybody has, I mean, you know, it might not be the TNT app. It's WB, what is it? Warner Brothers Discovery.
I guess they would. Yeah, they're on HBO Max, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's what they are now.
Yeah. So I mean, everybody's got some type of network that they're streaming into.
It's just and one of the other things he brought up. Okay, now do all of this, and let's say everything works out. Everybody moves forward with these new TV deals, and let's say the Pac-12, whatever happens, it works, and then all of a sudden. He was talking about Andy Zimbalist, who's got a story. Do you realize that, and we do, because of the O'Bannon case and the other ones, that how many lawsuits could pop at any moment that could lead to pay for play?
Oh, yeah.
How many...
That's what's going to create the Super League.
There you go.
I don't know I mean, ESPN has an article about this today. They have a little round table. It doesn't reveal any information whatsoever. It's all just opinions. but it's like, 3 or 4 of their staff writers all sitting around debating realignment topics. So, they're discussing the same things that we are and banning about the same ideas that we are. But yeah, that's what's eventually going to probably be the straw that breaks the camel's back for some programs is once we get into pay for play, which is pretty much inevitable. Or no, we're already in pay for play. What am I talking about?
Yeah, we are.
Once we get into clear pay for play where we're not even trying to pretend this is NIL anymore. Like this is just everybody's an employee and everybody's getting regular employment status. There will be a further separation than there is now. And the belief, for some is that there's only 2 leagues really that will be able to swing that. But I don't think anybody's of the belief that means there's only going to be 2 leagues standing. It's just going to be, a giant gulf between them and everybody else. That's just growing larger and larger because of the money difference and the fact that, there's not going to be a bunch of teams. Not everybody's going to be able to sign up and pay people like employees, pay athletes like employees. And so, I think that's what everybody's watching right now is that in particular, more than anything else really is how long can they hold on until that inevitably happens and that shoe drops. And I think that's what a lot of schools are preparing for right now is how to prepare. And that's probably worth asking Mac Rhodes tomorrow. If we have him, are they preparing for the idea of, what if athletes become employees? Because, that doesn't seem like it's too far away at all. And as a matter of fact, it seems like a lot of people are talking that up as though that's inevitable and are already preparing to get all their ducks in a row for that.
Jim Williams, who contacted me on Twitter, just a couple of notes from what he said, by the way. He's in D.C., he was a part of Home Sports Entertainment. Paul, were you ever around when there was HSE?
Yeah.
HSE.
Yeah.
It then became, I believe, Fox Sports Southwest, or maybe whatever.
I think it was a
before
couple
that.
other things, before
and
that.
now it's Bally, or whatever they are
which
now.
Might be something else, too, because their the regional sports networks are
Fox Sports Southwest,
bankrupt.
yeah. And I remember my days doing the Astros, Rockets, Rangers, Spurs, Mavericks, boxing. I loved the old Southwest Conference and the battles back in the day. He'd been in business kind of in the broadcasting as a director, producer, and then eventually involved in some of these deals. 45 years. I was involved in the 2010 Big East ACC war as I watched Larry Smith came close to getting Texas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State to the Pac-12. John Skipper, of course, then launched the Longhorn Network that allowed the Big 12 to remain intact. He knows Bob Thompson. He's watched some of our segments with Bob Thompson. He's writing now. I think it's not just Forbes, but also maybe with the Sports Business Journal as well, and just loves the show. He said that we'll keep good work. Tell my best to Craig and Paul. I just wanted to touch base and say I enjoy you guys in your work.
Oh, thank you very much, Jim. Appreciate that quite a bit. Yeah, it is, and look, the sports is now just getting to the point. Like streaming was never, when it was conceptualized, like sports was the kind of the second tier of it. It was how much, can we get you to sit here and watch 25 episodes of one show in a row and get you locked into this app, which sports, while you can sit all day and watch sports, it was never just part of that because of just the nature of the beast. So, when it comes down to streaming, they're still finding their way with sports and what makes the most sense.
Yeah, I know this has been an aggravating time for Pac-12 fans, and there's been a lot of headbutting, Big 12, Pac-12, and all that stuff, and who knows how this all plays out. I'll say for the 100th time, I've always and continue to expect the Pac-12 to land some type of deal that keeps them satisfied. I've not wavered on that, and I still think that's where we're headed. But who the heck knows, if they don't get the offer that they're looking for. I understand the reason why there's all sorts of, talk and just daydreaming and just scuttlebutt and whatever about, fantasy booking about what, the fallout could look like. And people on the Pac-12 side have to understand that's because it's fun to think about. Like, it's nothing. It's no ill will. It's not, we hope you die. I know there are some fans that say otherwise, and they feel how they feel. But I think for the majority of people, realignment's not just suddenly fascinating because the Pac-12's, on a breather. It's been fascinating for all of college football's existence. It's something that everybody swarms to whenever a new story comes up because it's an interesting topic. And so that's why it's nearly a year-round rumor mill at this point, thanks to Oklahoma and Texas a couple years back. But let's not act like they started this ball. College football's history is one of realignment. This is not new. This is not exclusive. This is not anything but just a very interesting topic that's interesting, again, because there happens to be another interesting storyline. And I've seen a couple of times of like, well, why is the Pac-12 being talked about? We didn't talk about the SEC TV deal. I don't remember talking about this TV deal. Let me put it to you very clearly. What was there to talk about the SEC TV deal other than the gobs and gobs of money? The conversation there was how much money were they going to get, not where they were going to end up per se. I mean, although that was a question, like where could all they end up? Could they dominate the entire – but we weren't worried about the SEC getting to a certain figure. We were wondering how far past whatever figure we had in our minds they were going to blow past. We weren't wondering what channel, streaming or linear, they might end up on. We were wondering how many channels they were going to end up on. So there was no reason to bat an eye at the SEC TV deal. The Big 12, go ahead.
Well, and then juxtapose that to the Big 10 is how
that's what I'm going to get to.
Yeah, is how Kevin Warren spun 3 good football programs into, a deal that's better.
Yeah, but the Big Ten, the question wasn't, is the Big Ten going to survive or not? The Big Ten was adding USC and UCLA and then negotiating their TV deal while their commissioner threatened expansion all over the rest of college football by not declaring it over and by leaving the door completely wide open like the biggest troll and puppet master known to man. He did that. You created an alliance with him. He screwed you over, and you're still more mad at the Big 12 than you're mad at Kevin Warren. Like, that's crazy. We didn't talk about the Big Ten TV deal the same way because it was in a matter of how much money they're going to get. It's like we knew they were getting gobs of money. We knew they were going to – our question was how many of Fox, CBS, ESPN, all of that would they end up on? And when it was all said and done, they ended up with the biggest deal ever. And that was a wide talking point. But it was a different kind of conversation because they were never under any threat. There was no poaching that was going to be done other than them being the ones that poached. So both of those examples, that's why it's wildly different. The Big 12 TV deal, that happened so damn quickly. We didn't talk about it because they weren't supposed to have it. There wasn't anything to talk about. They expanded, and then they were supposed to wait until, another year from now before they even entered TV negotiations. So why would we talk about a deal that wasn't even in the works until Brett Yormark and company, whoever it was, maybe one of the school presidents, maybe an AD, decided to say, hey, let's jump out in front, which turned out to be what appears to be a pretty brilliant idea. We'll see once the Pac TV deal comes into play. But there was nothing to talk about because it happened seemingly overnight and it came unexpected. And the ACC TV deal, we've talked about it at great length, especially here recently, because it's the huge talking point that keeps everything from basically dissolving and falling apart if you think of the doomsday scenarios, because it's the only thing preventing schools from pulling a USC or UCLA or Oklahoma and Texas is this godforsaken long agreement that the ACC made years ago. So we still talked about their TV deal despite the fact it doesn't come up for another decade. So that's the difference. And I don't think that that's hard to figure out. There's a massive difference in those 4 conferences and the way their TV deals were negotiated. A couple of them never under any threat of losing out on TV space whatsoever. It was a matter of how much they were going to leave for everybody else. One swooped in, so there was just an overnight just grabbing of TV rights. And one's been done for like 10 years and has another 10 to go. So that's why the Pac-12 is unique, is because it is losing 2 big brands. It hasn't gone and added BYU, Cincinnati, UCF. It didn't jump in line and grab a TV deal. It's just gone by its timeline, and as a result of doing that, it's found itself in a more unique situation where it is pretty stable, but not to the point to where it's a non-story. And I think that that's as best as I can explain why it feels like the Pac-12 has been picked on.
You've said a lot with that and explained it. And one of the things